Hi guys, welcome to my video. My name is Darian and today we are going to be talking about bow hand and arm placement. You've probably already seen my previous video talking about how to have a proper bow grip. So if you want to refer back to that for a more in-depth video on how to hold the bow, I recommend just going back and then coming back to this. But we're going to be incorporating proper bow placement on the violin, so I hope you're ready to just work with your right hand today and hope you have your bows ready. So, for a brief overview on a good bow grip, just take your bows from me. I just want you to double check, if you've seen my other video, I just want you to double check how you're holding your bow before we move on to bow placement on the violin. But again, we want to make sure we have a bent thumb. We want to make sure we close the loop with our middle finger. The ring finger should be over the eye of the bow. The pointer finger is providing counter pressure to the thumb. And then our pinky is resting nicely on top of our bow. So we want to make sure everything's relaxed and we can move our fingers freely and that our thumb remains bent so that we can always have good counter pressure to our forefinger. This is where most of our pressure comes from. Our pinky lifts the bow and our ring finger helps move the sounding point. So everything needs to be very loose, and just double check this and then you can move on to the next part of the video. Okay, so I recommend having a mirror ready for this part of the video so that you can double check if you have the correct shape in your bow arm and that your bow is always straight. The goal of playing the violin most efficiently is to have a straight bow at all times where it's parallel to the fingerboard and to the bridge. We're going to be staying in the middle sounding point, around sounding point 3. All right, and we're going to start in the middle of the bow. All right, so I'm going to place right in the middle, divide my bow in half, and we are going to look at the proper shape for a good bow form. So my bow is parallel, and it's also parallel to my forearm, to my upper arm here. And if you look, the best placement in the middle of the bow is to create a square between your sounding point, your hand, your forearm, and your upper arm. If you can see, I have created a square. So when you're moving through your bow and you get to the middle part of the bow, you should have a nice square shape. If your shoulders are hunched, which we shouldn't do because this is holding tension, you have a kind of a strange looking square. So we want to make sure it's relaxed and that our elbow isn't too high and that it is appropriately leveled to whatever plane or string that you're playing on. Okay, so now that we know the proper placement in the middle of the bow, we're going to look at the proper placement at the tip. This is typically where beginners play, from the middle to the tip. So we're going to move. All right, so I'm at the tip of the bow. My bow is still parallel to my fingerboard and my bridge. And you kind of have to push out your elbow a little bit to maintain a straight bow. If you don't move your elbow, you will get this, which as you can see is no longer straight. So we want to push out our elbow a little bit. Our body needs to adjust some because we do not naturally have the proper mobility in our joints if we do not adjust. All right, we will no longer have a square, but we'll have a very wide triangle. So, I'm going to move my camera so you can see. Alright, so I'm at my tip of my bow, and between my sounding point to where my bow is on the string, to my hand and my shoulder, we have a sort of a big triangle shape. So if we move from our square to the tip, we move from a square to a triangle, and back to a square. And you can check these shapes in your mirror to double check that as you're moving through a whole bow stroke that you are properly keeping your bow straight and have a nice shape. Okay, so we have one more point in the bow that we need to talk about, which is going to be where the form is at the frog. So when we're at the bottom of the bow, we are also going to be creating a triangle. It's going to be a much smaller triangle though. So I'm going to move down to my frog. My shoulder's still not raised, and my elbow is still at a good angle. And if you look between the sounding point here, my elbow and my shoulder, I have created a nice tiny triangle. My bow is still straight, and I have moved appropriately to my next shape. So your goal from here, after you've mastered a good form in all three parts of the bow, is I recommend trying to just to put it together. You can start from the middle or the tip. I recommend maybe the frog in the middle. I'm gonna start the frog for demonstration. You're gonna see my triangle, my square, and my big triangle. Yeah, so that is gonna be good bow placement with your arm. And I want you to also just to double check your bow grip as you do this to make sure that nothing is changing, that our thumb's still bent, and that our wrist is relaxed. Again, we need good wrist mobility to change bows and to have a good straight bow and a nice relaxed shape. So again, if you have any questions, this is super important, so please reach out and I hope you have fun practicing.